My name is Claire, I'm 31 years old, and I need to tell you about my grandmother's music box. The one that played me to sleep every night when I was a child. The one that I thought was filled with beautiful, peaceful melodies. I was wrong. It wasn't filled with music at all. It was filled with my grandmother's nightmares. And now those nightmares are becoming real. My grandmother Elena passed away last month at 94. She had lived through more trauma than anyone should have to bear. World War II, the loss of her first husband, poverty, immigration to a new country where she didn't speak the language. But to me, she was just my loving grandmother who would wind up her little wooden music box every night and let its gentle melody lull me to sleep. When I inherited her belongings, the music box was the first thing I wanted to keep. It was about the size of a jewelry box, carved from dark wood with intricate flowers painted on the lid. Inside, a tiny ballerina would spin to the most beautiful, haunting melody I'd ever heard. It reminded me of my childhood, of safety, of love. I had no idea that my grandmother had been using that music box to share her darkest memories with me. And now, 30 years later, those memories are trying to make me live them. I have vivid memories of staying at my grandmother's house as a child. Every night, she would come to my room, wind up the music box, and place it on my nightstand. "Sweet dreams, little one," she would whisper in her thick accent. "Let the music carry you to peaceful places." The melody was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Not quite classical, not quite folk, but something in between. It was haunting and beautiful, and it never failed to put me to sleep within minutes. I would lie in bed, watching the little ballerina spin, and feel completely safe and loved. But here's the thing I never told anyone. I always had the most vivid, disturbing dreams when I slept at my grandmother's house. Dreams about running through dark forests, hiding from soldiers, watching buildings burn. Dreams about hunger, cold, and terrible loss. I would wake up exhausted, like I hadn't slept at all. When I told my parents about these nightmares, they said it was normal for children to have bad dreams sometimes. They never connected it to the music box. Neither did I until now. My grandmother would always ask me about my dreams the next morning. "What did you see, little one?" she would ask, her eyes intense and searching. When I described the nightmares, she would nod knowingly and say, "Now you understand. Now you carry the memories too." I thought she was just being poetic, the way elderly people sometimes are. I had no idea she was being literal. After the funeral, I brought the music box to my apartment. I placed it on my dresser. Just looking at it brought back so many memories of my grandmother's love. For the first few days, I didn't wind it up. It was too emotional, too soon. But one night, about a week after the funeral, I was having trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about my grandmother, missing her voice, missing her presence. Almost without thinking, I reached for the music box and wound it up. The familiar melody filled my bedroom, and I felt instantly comforted. The little ballerina began her eternal dance, and I lay back on my pillows, feeling like a child again. Within minutes, I was fast asleep. That's when the nightmares began again. But this time they were different. More vivid, more real. I wasn't just observing these horrible events. I was living them. I was a young woman running through a bombed-out city, clutching a photograph of my family. I was hiding in a basement while soldiers searched the streets above. I was watching my home burn while my neighbors were dragged away. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, with the taste of smoke in my mouth. The music box had wound down, the ballerina had stopped spinning, but I could still hear the melody echoing in my head. I convinced myself it was just grief, that losing my grandmother had triggered these childhood nightmares. But over the next few weeks, every time I wound up the music box, the same thing happened. Vivid, terrifying dreams that felt more like memories than nightmares. I started keeping a dream journal, writing down everything I experienced while the music box played. The dreams were always the same. I was always a young woman in war-torn Europe, always running, always hiding, always afraid. But the details were incredibly specific. I dreamed about a small village called Kozova, about a house with blue shutters and a garden full of sunflowers. I dreamed about a man named Dmitri with kind eyes and gentle hands. I dreamed about watching him being taken away by soldiers while I hid in the woods. The dreams were so detailed, so emotionally real, that I started researching them. I looked up the village of Kozova and found it was a real place in Ukraine. I researched the history of the area during World War II and found records of mass deportations, of families being torn apart, of villages being destroyed. But the most disturbing discovery came when I found my grandmother's immigration records. Her maiden name was Elena Kozova. She was born in a village called Kozova in 1928. Her first husband's name was Dmitry, and he had been declared missing in 1944. The dreams weren't random nightmares. They were my grandmother's actual memories. Somehow, the music box was allowing me to experience her life, to live through her trauma, to feel her pain as if it were my own. I should have stopped winding the music box then. But I couldn't. It was like I was addicted to these glimpses into my grandmother's past. I wanted to understand what she had been through, to feel closer to her, to honor her memory by carrying her experiences. I had no idea that the nightmares were just the beginning. My boyfriend Marcus started staying over more frequently, and one night, he was in the bedroom when I wound up the music box. I warned him that the melody might make him sleepy, but he just laughed and said he found it relaxing. Within minutes, both of us were asleep. But when we woke up, Marcus was trembling and pale. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. "I dreamed I was being chased by soldiers. I dreamed I was hiding in a forest, watching people being loaded onto trains. It felt so real, Claire. It felt like I was actually there." I realized then that the music box didn't just affect me. It affected anyone who heard its melody. My grandmother's nightmares were being shared with anyone in the room. I started experimenting, inviting friends over, and playing the music box while they napped. Every single person had the same type of dreams: war, persecution, loss, fear. They all experienced fragments of my grandmother's memories. But then something even more disturbing happened. My friend Sarah came over for dinner, and I played the music box after she'd had a few glasses of wine. She fell asleep on my couch, and when she woke up, she was speaking Ukrainian. Fluent Ukrainian, a language she'd never learned. "Where am I?" she asked in perfect Ukrainian. "Where is Dmitry? They took him away, and I couldn't save him." She was crying, reaching for someone who wasn't there, speaking in my grandmother's voice. It took 20 minutes for Sarah to snap out of it, and when she did, she had no memory of speaking Ukrainian. But she remembered the dreams vividly. She remembered being Elena, living Elena's life, feeling Elena's pain. That's when I realized the music box wasn't just sharing memories. It was sharing my grandmother's consciousness, her actual soul. And each time someone experienced her memories, a piece of her came back. I went through my grandmother's belongings more carefully, looking for clues about the music box. In her bedroom closet, I found a collection of journals written in Ukrainian. I had them translated, and what I discovered made my blood run cold. The journals revealed that my grandmother had been having nightmares every night for 60 years. The same nightmares I was now experiencing. She wrote about the music box, about how it had been given to her by an old woman in a displaced persons camp after the war. The old woman had told her that the music box was special, that it could help her share her pain with others so she wouldn't have to carry it alone. "Your trauma is too heavy for one person," the woman had said. "Let others help you carry it." But sharing the trauma hadn't made it lighter. It had made it stronger. Every person who experienced my grandmother's nightmares added their own emotional energy to the memories. The music box was becoming a reservoir of collective trauma, growing more powerful with each person it touched. My grandmother wrote about how she had used the music box on my grandfather, on my parents, on me. She had been sharing her pain with the family for decades, but she hadn't realized that she was also trapping pieces of herself in the process. The final entry in her journal was written just days before her death. "I am dying, but I am not leaving. The music box holds too much of me now. I will live on in the dreams of those who hear its song. My pain will become their pain. My memories will become their memories." I thought I was sharing my burden, but I was creating a curse. Claire will inherit the music box as I intended. She is strong enough to carry my memories. But I fear what I have created. I fear that my nightmares will become reality, that the trauma I survived will manifest in the world of the living. I realized then that my grandmother hadn't just been sharing her memories with me as a child. She had been preparing me to become the next guardian of her trauma, the next person to carry the weight of her pain. The nightmares started bleeding into my waking life. I would be walking down the street and suddenly smell smoke, hear air raid sirens, see shadowy figures in SS uniforms. The trauma my grandmother had experienced was becoming real in my present. Other people who had been exposed to the music box started calling me, panicked and confused. Marcus said he was seeing soldiers in his apartment. Sarah said she was hearing Ukrainian voices in her head, telling her to hide. My friend Tom said he was having panic attacks every time he heard loud noises. The music box was creating a network of shared trauma, and that trauma was manifesting in the real world. We were all living my grandmother's nightmares, and those nightmares were becoming our reality. I knew I had to stop it, but I also knew that simply destroying the music box wouldn't be enough. Too many people had been affected. Too much of my grandmother's consciousness had been shared. The trauma had taken on a life of its own. I gathered everyone who had been exposed to the music box and brought them to my apartment. We sat in a circle around the music box, and I wound it up one final time. As the melody played, we all fell asleep together. But this time, instead of experiencing my grandmother's nightmares passively, we entered them actively. We found ourselves in that war-torn village, but we were there together, supporting each other. We found my grandmother's spirit, still trapped in that moment of greatest trauma, still running through the forest, still searching for Dmitri. But now she wasn't alone. We were there with her, ready to help her carry the weight of her memories. "You don't have to run anymore, Grandma," I told her. "You don't have to carry this pain alone. But you also don't have to share it with us. It's time to let it go." Together, we helped her stop running. We helped her turn and face the trauma that had been chasing her for 60 years. And when she finally stopped running, when she finally let go of the pain, the nightmares began to fade. When we woke up, the music box was silent. The ballerina had stopped spinning, the melody had ended, and the wood itself looked different, lighter, less dark, like a weight had been lifted from it. I tried to wind it up again, but it wouldn't play. The mechanism was intact, but the music was gone. Whatever had been trapped inside the box had been released. The nightmares stopped that day. Not just mine, but everyone's. The manifestations ceased, the panic attacks ended, and the voices in our heads fell silent. My grandmother's trauma had finally been laid to rest. I still have the music box, but I keep it on a shelf now, unwound and quiet. Sometimes I look at it and remember my grandmother's love, her strength, her resilience. But I also remember the lesson she taught me. Trauma shared without consent becomes a curse, but trauma faced together with love becomes healing. My grandmother survived horrors that most people can't even imagine. She lived through war, loss, displacement, and poverty. She carried that pain for 60 years, and in the end, she tried to share it with her family because she didn't want to face it alone. I understand now why she did it. I understand the weight of carrying such terrible memories. But I also understand that some burdens are too heavy to pass on to others. Some pain has to be faced and healed rather than shared and perpetuated. If you ever inherit something from a family member who lived through trauma, be careful. Sometimes the most precious gifts come with the heaviest costs. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is help someone let go of the pain they've been carrying for too long. My grandmother is at peace now. And for the first time in 60 years, so is her family.